Hi everybody, welcome back. I hope you're well. I hope you and your families are well. Thank you so much for viewing the videos today. General reminders first. I think I gotta step up closer. We are Economics Help Videos, and we have an econhelpvideos.com website. And we're trying to create some videos to help people understand basic and introductory economics, especially students that are formally taking it, but really anybody out there in the economy, right? Some moms and dads and professionals that maybe want to review some stuff they haven't seen in a long time, or maybe somebody that hasn't studied it and it's new to them. And maybe even moms and dads, your high schoolers or middle schoolers, they can start practicing on how to apply some math stuff they're learning to some things that what I'm working on will be some college test questions, and have been some college test questions since 1981. I've hit the grandpa years, right? Although I'm not a grandfather, I wish I was. Okay, we are very much old school, low tech. Do some by hand, and I'm doing it by hand to sort of match it up. Does that make sense? So, I could go to some fancy studio and do all the, technology stuff, but I want to try and show people that are learning this, and maybe especially the students that would really have to rewrite some of this stuff down on the note papers that I'll send you guys with the files. You got to do it by hand to really master it. Even if 90% of the people taking econ probably full-time or, formally will do multiple choice, but they'll still have to draw these graphs to get the multiple choice correct. Does that make sense? And to master it at a very high, B+A level or something like that. So do you remember when your math teacher said, put the calculators away, let's do some long division by hand? That's what we're thinking about here. That's what our strategy is. We're going to master the tough parts of introductory economics by hand, and we're going to show you how to do it, kind of stuff, right? So old school. And Betsy, my producer, has been with me for too many hours this summer, working so hard. We keep joking, one of these days we're going to get some sleep. Our other two assistants aren't here right now. They're volunteering. Courtney, who helps with all of the genius stuff, and Jake, our photographer. So I'm actually going to have to get behind the camera today, and I'm going to mess it up for sure. So there's another example of low tech. Anyway, it's almost silly, but we're doing it on purpose to see if we can match up. You guys that are doing it tough, this is a 4S for supply. So, get some blue paper is what I'm going to suggest. Blue for supply, green for demand is what I've been suggesting so far. Or you just got to get with your notebook, your textbook, maybe these videos, and sit down and write the stuff out, right? Do it by hand. That's our philosophy if you'll hang in there with us. Okay, so where are we at now? So that's the silly one. This is video supply 04S, or I'm just going to call it 4S. I put the 0 in there for some sorting things later. It's the change in supply graphs, right, kind of thing. Last time, 3S, once we talk about change in supply, you got to do 3S and 4S together. Does that make sense? The only thing that's going to cause a change in supply is a change in one of those determinants of supply that were listed on 3S, or in your book if you have a textbook for the class. Okay, so we're going to do the graphs today. If you join with me, and here's where the graphs are going to be. On the left, we're going to have a decrease in supply, which is a shift left of the entire supply curve. Does that make sense? So we put that on the left. On the right, we're going to have an increase in supply. That's a shift right of the entire supply curve. So we're going to put that there. Last time on the 3S, I showed you this real quick. If this is way too messy, you should just do it in regular pen and pencil, or much thinner markers, or we're going to do color. And I'm going to stop and every now and then mention the 3S thing, right? 3S and 4S go together, right? This is the list. How do we get these change in demand graphs? One of these determinants of demand, how do we get these change in supply, the blue graphs? Sorry about that, make mistakes sometimes. How do we get the change in supply graphs? One of the determinants of supply on 3S has to change. Now these are the basic determinants. In the real world, all those great marketing companies like Johnson & Johnson and Procter & Gamble and, oh my word, Apple and Facebook now and Microsoft and IBM and just Vanguard, all kinds of great companies. They're looking at some other more specific issues too. But this is the core list, the core basic list that economists usually go through, okay? So let's get busy and let's do some of the graphs, okay? I gotta, excuse me for a moment. Okay, so in 4Fs, on the left-hand side, we're going to have a change in supply, such that there's a decrease in supply. I'm going to shift the entire supply curve to the left. So we're going to change supply. The way I'm setting this up for now anyway, 2 supply curves and 1 demand curve, okay? 2 supply curves, 1 demand curve. So we'll draw that 1 demand curve first, but first we're going to do the shell, the axes. So instead of y and x like in math, we're going to do quantity on the horizontal axis. There's the 0 point. And price, the P's and Q's, right? Have you ever heard that before? Expressed in dollars in the United States marketplaces, right? And this is quantity per some time period. We'll explain that a little bit more, but some markets are just popping really quick, like financial markets. And if Southwest Airlines is deciding whether to buy some more Boeing jets, that might be, a bit of a much more time-consuming decision, right, as they figure out when and where they're going to replace stuff and which ones they're going to refurbish. So time periods may change depending on which market you're looking at. And speaking of that, we always want to label the market. Oh, we got it labeled up there. Oh, geez, I'm messing up. We labeled it the market for question mark because this is our general reference. Don't write this stuff here, okay? That was a bad one. Sorry, do I look like a absent-minded professor in the class? We wanted to be a question mark because you can put anything in there, right? This is just going to be the general reference for when we have a decrease in supply in any specific microeconomic market, right? Does that make sense? Individual market. Okay, so we said the first thing after we get the shell, price and quantity on there, would be to draw a demand curve. So we're only going to have 1 demand curve, so we'll just label that D. And then we need to shift the supply curve to the left. So our first supply curve's got to be over to the right, practically speaking, just to fit it in there, not get too jammed up in terms of labeling things. So we're going to come out to the right here a little bit and go from the bottom of the graph up to about the top of the graph and then label it up there for supply, the demand ones we labeled in below. Now, at the intersection is this situation called equilibrium. More on that in the future, but for now we're going to say, let's go perpendicular out to the price axis, and that's going to be a price, but it's an equilibrium. An equilibrium price, the E word comes first, equilibrium price 1, okay, because we're going from supply 1. And then down to the quantity axis, that's going to be QE1, but once again the wording is the E word comes first, equilibrium quantity 1, since we're coming from supply 1. That is a very important quantity because if you see that at that price, that's the quantity demand value coming from the demand curve, right, where they're intersecting. And at that price, that's also the quantity supply value. So the reason it's called the equilibrium quantity is that it's balanced by both the demand, quantity demand, and quantity supply. And the price that balances quantity demand and quantity supply is called the balancing price or the equilibrium price. Okay, more on that in the future. Okay, back to the mechanics of a shift left of the supply curve, which is a decrease in supply. Okay, so we're going to just start out here a little bit further to the left and try to go something like parallel. So from the bottom up to the top, S3. Now, when I do a decrease in either demand or supply, I go from S1 to S3. You could go from S1 to S133. It really doesn't matter, But when I do the increase, I'm going to go S1 to S2, and S1 to S3 will be the decrease. And then as we initially talk about that, it might be a little bit easier to refer to. Oh, he's going to S3, that must be the decrease one. Yes, because we're shifting to the left. So we're going to have a horizontal arrow pointing to the left, up around where the S's are, the labels, and then one down at the bottom, displaying that the static graph is actually a little bit more dynamic, right? Now, we have a new situation here. We have to pretend S1's not there, so we have a new equilibrium or intersection of S3 and the main curve D. So we go perpendicular from that intersection, and that's PE3, okay? Equilibrium price 3, since it's coming from supply curve 3. And then what do you think is going to happen down here? You got it already, right? You got it, right? Okay, equilibrium quantity 3, all right? Coming from supply curve 3. Now, what has happened? Well, you remember the number line, vertical number line? The equilibrium price has risen, but the equilibrium quantity has decreased. Does that make sense? Okay? So somehow the supply gets restricted in marketplaces, right? There's going to be higher prices and less of it traded. Okay? Does that make sense? Very logical. Let's just keep going. Okay. So here's a change in supply, says that there's an increase in supply. That, the model tells us, that we have to graphically illustrate by shifting to the right. So the first thing we want to do is draw the shell, and I've got it started here a little bit. So that's what I call the shell of the demand and supply model, right? It just has the axes with the appropriate labels in there, right? You gotta put the labels on every graph that you ever do when you're whatever field of study you're in. So you can just let everybody know what variables you're looking at now, what the relationships are between those variables. Okay, so we're changing supply, so that means we're only gonna have one demand curve. So, something like this, I guess, would work. Start at the top, try and finish down towards the bottom. Okay, label it D since there's only one of them. And here, I don't want to draw my first supply curve way out here this time because I've got to have the second one be to the right of the first one. So I'm practically just going to come back into the left a little bit, start at the bottom, try and finish up at the top, and that's going to be S1, my first supply curve. Okay? So then, let's see, we'll make that blue. And we'll go from there to perpendicular again, right? Remember the perpendicular stuff? Okay, right angles. So we say the E word first. Equilibrium price 1, PE1. Equilibrium quantity 1, right? Because we're at supply curve 1. Okay, so let's do the second one again. We got to go to the right, so I just move out to the right here a little bit and kind of see if I can get something parallel. And I draw an arrow right up where the labels are, and then I draw another one down below at the bottom of the supply curves, just to display that we have shifted to the right there. So that means S1's no longer relevant now. Okay, S2 is the appropriate supply curve that we consider. So at the intersection of S2 and demand curve D, we're going to have equilibrium values. So that's PE2, or equilibrium price 2, coming from supply curve 2. QE2, equilibrium quantity 2. Okay, now very quickly, what's happened? The equilibrium quantity has risen. Oops, I did this one wrong. It's come down, hasn't it? So I'll put a third arrow in there. A decrease. I was trying to say something about prices. Okay, so if there's an increase in the supply of something, it makes sense that the price would come down a bit and more of it would trade, okay? So here we have a formal model now that we're putting that kind of logical stuff that we could think about every day. You as a good consumer, your family, who in your family knows all this stuff just naturally, right? Somebody in your family is probably just a good business person just by being a good thinker. And now this helps, so putting some of those thoughts in a formal model, and we can think about them even better, hopefully, right? Okay, so I wanted to try to review that if we have a change in supply, where did it come from? On 3S, one of the determinants of supply had to change first. That causes a change in supply. We can only have two changes in supply. Supply can either decrease, like on the left of 4S, or it can increase, like on the right of 4S. So it's got to be one of these two possibilities. We would say the equilibrium results of an increase in supply are a decrease in equilibrium price and an increase in equilibrium quantity. Back to the first one that we did. The equilibrium results of a decrease in supply, shift left, are an increase in equilibrium price and a decrease in equilibrium quantity. Okay? Now, I'm just going to take this sheet down, and as we finish up this 4S video, excuse me for a moment, I'm going to jump behind, and I'm going to, Jake's going to kill me because I'm doing this the wrong way. But do you remember when we went over number of sellers on 3S? Actually, we had gone over that on 0S. Remember when we did Tough Times Bank? There was an increase in the number of sellers because of the bad news, and that led to an increase in supply. Well, when you increase supply, the mechanics say shift the supply curve to the right. For example, from S1 to S2 on worksheet 4S and video 4S. And then we would say the increase in supply is graphically illustrated by a shift right of the entire supply curve. And the equilibrium results of an increase in supply are a decrease in equilibrium price and an increase in equilibrium quantity. Okay, back over to another example from 3S. Do you remember we said, please think about supply now, and what would happen if you expected the future price to rise? Now, price is something great, really, really good when you're the producer, right? If price rises when we're trying to buy our favorite goods or services for the summertime, we would be upset, right? But price going up is revenue per unit to the producers and the sellers and the suppliers. So what are they going to do? Think about. They're going to try to decrease their supply now and see if they can save some of it in inventory so that they can offer it in the marketplace in the future when prices are higher. So let's go back to the mechanics then. A decrease in supply is graphically illustrated by a shift left of the entire supply curve. For example, from S1 to S3 on figure 4S or video 4S, right? That kind of thing. That's what we just did. Okay? And the equilibrium results of the decrease in supply are an increase in equilibrium price and a decrease in equilibrium quantity. So do you see how 3S and 4S connect, you guys? Okay? And it all deals with the change in supply. Do you remember we said we had that tricky rule? A change in supply is not the same thing as a change in quantity supply. When we had a change in quantity supply, that was graphically illustrated by a movement along the same supply curve. On 2S, in video 2S, we said the only thing that would cause a change in the quantity supply of summer dresses would be a change in the price of summer dresses, and that's graphically illustrated by a movement along the same supply curve. But if we switch to the three-word phrase, a change in supply, we're in the world of video 3S and 4S. And we graphically illustrate the change in supply by a shift of the entire supply curve. If there's an increase in supply, we shift right. If there's a decrease in supply, we shift left. Does that make sense? Wow, okay. Can't believe we got through all that. That's so awesome. Let's just review one more time all of the labels. If you guys need that, I'm just going to do that quickly so you guys can Pause if you need it. Oh, look, there's the website. That's awesome, right? econhealthvideos.com. Once more, remember the review that we're doing, quadrant 1 of the Cartesian plane geometry space. Instead of y, we're using price. Instead of x, we're using quantity. And you guys are working on doing the great job for me, trying to study the background terms and definitions. And I'm going to try and help you with the applications, the tough parts of the models, the formulas, the tables, the graphs, and so forth. And we think this will help current and near future intro econ students, maybe even some people further along in econ, maybe some moms and dads reviewing things or learning econ for the first time. And then maybe even you could get some of your high schoolers and middle schoolers to see if they could try some college stuff, see if they could challenge themselves for how to apply some math things, right? One more time, there's oh, look at that, the website address. Okay, I'm gonna put this down, I hope at the right place. Jake's gonna kill me, my photographer, I'm doing a bad job. Thank you so much, right? Remember, we're doing this low tech, almost silly, because you gotta get in your copybook with your notes and your class notes and your textbook. Maybe these videos will help. I'm hoping they'll help. And, fight through these models by hand. They're really fun once you get them down to how you can apply them. Boy, the applications of international applications to, environmental resources and, pollution and energy and financial marketplaces. And boy, it's just all over the place, right? Are the possibilities, logistical markets, right? Think about Amazon, they're selling everything all over the world and they're guaranteeing deliveries and stuff. They gotta have all that stuff spread out all over the world, and you guys could get some of those kind of jobs. There are a lot of them out there, and economics can really help train your brain. Thank you for your patience, and I hope you and your families are doing great, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for viewing things. Bye-bye now.